It never ceases to amaze me how quickly and how professionally everything gets done here in Japan. As of now, we are 4 months to the date from the day that we actually broke ground on the property with Eisei Kensetsu, who is the company that's building our home here in Kyoto. And as you can see, the framing is done, the insulation has been put in, all the windows have been put in, the central heating and air is put in, electrical is all done, and the drywall is starting to be put up as well. And it's just amazing to me in such a short amount of time that this amount of work can be done. And when you walk through the house and actually look at the individual features, all of these different components, the moving elements, and all of the daikusan, who are the builders who are putting this together, it's incredible to see the level of quality that they've all been able to put into this work in such a short amount of time. Ever since the pandemic, it's been really hard apparently to find quality daikusan, or again, the builders or contractors who actually build out homes like this. But we've been really lucky in working with Eisei Kensetsu, as they've got some fantastic in-house builders as well as some incredible subcontractors that they subcontract some of this work out to. And each one of these guys has done an incredible job in their specific field. Particularly the two main guys who have been doing most of the woodwork throughout the house. They put up most of the framing themselves. They did all of the fine details in terms of the roofing and the ceiling that I've shown in previous episodes here on YouTube and on Bonsai U, meaning the kind of traditional elements like the saobuchi and the kesho daruki, which is the round poles, the round beams that we put up on the ceiling over the deck and over the engawa on the back of the house. They put an insane amount of detail and incredible amount of craftsmanship into the work in these areas of the home. So it's been a pleasure working with them, coming in on a weekly basis and kind of going over what they've done throughout the house as they explain the progress and where they're going forward with the rest of the project. So one thing that we opted to do with this house build is utilize a building practice here that's a kind of modern take on old Japanese woodworking, and it's what's called Eisei-en in Japanese. But basically it uses steel components to replace the old kind of peg and groove woodworking that you would see in old homes in Japan. So if you've ever been to Japan, or if you've ever studied Japanese architecture or building or woodworking, you'll know that in the past, essentially no nails were used throughout the homes here. They were essentially fitted together with perfect fittings that looked both beautiful but also allowed for a lot of movement in the event of earthquakes. Well, nowadays, with this modern building technique called Eisei-en, those peg and groove components of old woodworking are replaced with steel components. So essentially the wood slips together with these steel bindings, but they're not fully locked together, so they can actually move a little bit in the event of a massive earthquake. So there's been a really big trend lately of people from overseas coming to Japan to buy old homes out in the countryside. These are things called akiya, which are essentially empty homes. And you can purchase those usually for really, really cheap, but there are many reasons why they're very cheap. One of which is that they typically don't have a lot of insulation, and they certainly don't have central heating and air. They tend to be really, really, really cold in the winter, and they can heat up quite a bit in the summer. So with our new house build here in Japan, we're doing something very different that actually isn't very common, and that is central heating and air. So it's been interesting working with the architects from Eisei Kensetsu as well as the builders here, as this really isn't something that they typically do here. So it's been fun to kind of watch them finagle the design of the house to be able to fit all of this stuff in here. Coming from the States, this doesn't sound profound or unique or interesting, but here in Japan, it's actually quite a rare thing nowadays. Of course, I'm not a builder, so I don't exactly know how things are done maybe in the United States or in Europe, for example, but Here in Japan, when it came to kind of the order of operations, I was quite surprised at when they actually put the flooring down in the house. So underneath this cardboard covering here is actually hardwood flooring. And this was all put in very early on in the process. Now in the States, having dealt with doing kind of like a house reform with our old house where Eisei-en used to be in Nashville, they put the flooring in as part of that redesign, but then they didn't cover it with anything and they scratched the living Hades out of it. Whereas here, everything is taped down perfectly. None of this cardboard moves at all. And this has been on here again for at least probably a month at this point. So essentially kind of 3 months into the build while they're still doing all the electrical and all of the air conditioner, and all that kind of stuff is getting put in here with people walking all over the place. They've got this down already with a cardboard on it. So kind of an interesting approach in my opinion. Again, I don't know how things are done necessarily overseas, but I thought that was kind of interesting, the order that this was put in here. So Japan has a lot of rules and regulations when it comes to building homes, one of which is the exterior of the home has to kind of match the neighborhood in which that house is found. And in Kyoto in particular, this is influenced a lot by whether or not the house is visible from some temple or shrine that is in the mountains surrounding the city. So our home here is in direct sight from a very famous temple. So all of the homes in the neighborhood here have to have a certain Japanese aesthetic to them, kind of a traditional look. And that includes the selection of the roof tiles. So we opted to go with a slight modern look to the roof tiles, but they're still traditional Japanese tiles. So kind of a ceramic made tile. Another thing too here with the earthquakes is that modern tiles have to be a certain weight. So the weight of the tiles here has to be significantly less than say old traditional tiles, because the heavier the roof is on the house, the more the house will move and potentially crumble during an earthquake. So I think, the tiles that we selected for the top, I give it a nice traditional feel without being, overly old feeling. So in addition to the roof tiles having to have a semi-traditional feel to them, the exterior of the house in terms of the walls also has to have a similar feeling. So we opted to go with a slight grayish type color. This is actually just mortar that's on the outside right here. This will actually get covered with a slightly lighter color gray, but this will give it kind of a modern wafu or modern Japanese feel. Now it was really interesting to see the process of how this was done. Initially paper was put on the exterior of the house, then on the outside of that small cryptomeria slats were put across the whole house, then felt was put on top of that, then a wire cage on top of that, and then the mortar went on the outside. So once this layer of mortar is dry, they'll redo the whole house with another layer, and then they'll put the coloration and the texture on the outside of that.
So today we are up in an area north of Kyoto in the mountains called Keihoku, and this is a very famous area for lumber. As a matter of fact, a lot of the lumber that's sourced for buildings down in Kyoto, whether that be for houses or temples or shrines, actually originates from this particular area here. So we're up in this area today actually in search of some features, some lighting features and some furniture features for our house. And one of the places that we're going to stop in today is a company called Muramokco. This is a lighting company that makes some of the most beautiful lights that I've ever seen, and we want to source some of these for our house. So let's head over to the company and check out what they have available. Muramokco is famous for utilizing native woods from Japan, and specifically from the Keihoku area, like cryptomeria and hinoki wood, to build out these very intricate and detailed lights. Now, some of these lights include hanging chandeliers as well as desk lamps, But for our purposes, what we're looking for our house are wall lights, bracket lights that we can put in the living room and up the staircase. So in the cafe that's right next to Muramokco, they have several of these bracket lights on display, including these that you see here. And these are actually what we're going to be sourcing for our house.
So these lighting fixtures from Muramokco are actually going to go up along the staircase, which is going to be right in this location at some point. I think it'll be built probably in the next month or so here. But there'll be two that go up the stairs here, and then there'll be a separate one on the other side of the living room here. So it'll add a nice little kind of traditional Japanese flair to this particular room.
While in Keihoku on this trip, we stopped into a shop called Kamonos Log. This is a woodworking shop owned by a very interesting fella named Eisei-en. And we had actually come up here about 6 months ago in search of a slab of wood to utilize as a desk or a table in the bedroom. So we found a beautiful piece of wood in Eisei-en's warehouse that was in fact a piece of keaki, which is a Japanese graybark elm or zelkova. Now, zelkova wood is notoriously very, very hard, so it's quite nice to utilize for desks and for things that you're going to be utilizing on a daily basis, as it won't really scratch or tear up very easily. Now, on this particular trip, we were back in Keihoku to discuss with Eisei-en about where we wanted to cut this particular slab so that it would fit properly within the bedroom. Because, you know, being a Japanese home in a small environment, there's very limited space, and every centimeter or every inch counts.
600で
ぐらいで、
ぐらいで、
はい、
マックス600。
マックス600、はいはい。ほんならもうそういう風にこれぐらいが捨てる分。
So that slab that we're sourcing from Kamonos Log up in Keihoku is going to go right in front of this window, actually all along this entire wall right here. And we're going to be keeping the natural live edge of the wood. I think it's going to add a really interesting flavor to this room. And in addition to that, because it's so long, we have to put several legs on the front side of it. So we're going to be using Japanese red pine or akamatsu. And the reason that we're going to use that is because it's going to give a nice contrast, I think, to the light color wood of the zelkova top. But also, I was debating when we were going to build our tokonoma up front, whether or not we wanted to go with red pine as the tokobashira, or if we wanted to use cryptomeria. And ultimately, as you guys know, we did end up going with the cryptomeria there. So I think, you know, being able to use the akamatsu, or again, red pine as the legs in here, means that I get to have both kinds of wood in the house, which I think is really, really cool, and will make a really nice feature in this room.
Back at the house in Kyoto, the garden design and building process is also underway, with the cherry tree that was planted last December having bloomed beautifully at the beginning of April this year. So I was worried when we planted this tree that the root ball was a little bit small, but the tree has responded excellently to that transplantation. As part of the continuing garden build at Eisei-en Kyoto, I recently went with Sone-san and Takao-san up to a stone company in Ohara, which is in the northeast part of Kyoto. We managed to pick out the slabs that are going to be utilized for the walkway in the entrance of the garden. And these are all repurposed stones from old gardens around Kyoto. So there's a lot of history just in each individual stone that's going to be going into Eisei-en Kyoto. In addition, Sone-san found a really interesting danseki or step stone, not one that you're going to actually physically walk on, but one that actually has steps down on it that I can place bonsai on somewhere in the garden. So this massive stone will be going towards the rear of the house, and we'll be able to display at least 1 or 2 bonsai on here with an accent plant next to it. So kind of a nice additional feature to the garden. This particular stone shop also had a lot of old and repurposed stone lanterns. So I spent a good amount of time looking through all of these, and unfortunately I still haven't found the exact one that I want to utilize for Eisei-en Kyoto, but we'll probably be going back up to this area sometime later this summer to see what's available then. Sonny-san also suggested that we utilize as many natural stepping stones as possible throughout the garden to bring a sense of naturalness to the feel of Eisei-en Kyoto. So many of these kind of roundish stepping stones will also be utilized in different areas throughout the garden. And personally, I'm a sucker for kurama ishi, which are stones that are found in the Kurama area north of Kyoto. They tend to have a reddish hue to them due to the iron deposits in that area. So we'll also be utilizing several of these stones throughout the garden too. Oh, and by the way, I recently went up to Tokyo to pick up several bonsai that I purchased during the Kokufu 10 earlier this year in February. So these trees were then brought all the way down to Fujikawa kouka-en in Osaka, where they'll be staying for the remainder of the summer until we finish the Eisei-en Kyoto garden build.
So I hope you guys enjoyed seeing the update of the house here. I will put further updates as the house continues to get built out, but we're looking at a possible August move-in date, which means it's going to be basically about 7 or 8 months from the beginning of the build to the end of the build. And of course, as we build out the garden here as well, I'll be doing updates on that too. So thank you guys so much for checking out this episode. Look forward to seeing all of you next time around, and until then, take care.
So this is one of our all-time favorite places to come. So this is one of our all-time favorite places to come on the weekends. It's an area called Keihoku, just north of Kyoto. Yeah. So this is one of our all-time favorite places to come on the weekends. Don't you come back over here. Go back over there. Go get Momo, look how far away she's going. So this is one of our all-time favorite, don't you come back over here. So this is one of our all-time favorite places to come. It's an area north, stop. Baby, please let me film this, okay? Please let me film this, okay?
No, I
just want to film it, take me 30 seconds.
I'm going to